neck. I don't say it. The first time I said something to my wife, I got smacked.
Dude, what's on your mask?
No, isn't that cool? That's why I just had to roll over gloves.
What's that? Oh, guys, I'm so excited. I didn't know. Hey, Tony.
Tony, how you doing?
Yes, ma'am. Everybody gets so quiet before the meeting.
Oh. Yeah. Hmm. 45. Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular meeting of the DeKalb City Council, March 8, 2021. Prior to the roll call this evening, I'd like to indicate to anyone who is in the audience who may like to speak to City Council tonight on any matter on the agenda, or for that matter, any item not on the agenda, to kindly get a speaker request form. They're in the foyer just as you come into the room here. Fill that out, give it to Ruth Scott, the executive assistant back there in the corner, arrayed in royal blue, and she will get this up to me and we'll get you on at the proper time. I also want to make sure that our city clerk is on the line. Lynn Fazekas, are you on the line and can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Very good. And I see Bill Finucane there. Bill, you can see us and hear us. Bill is a member of our city council who has chosen to join us virtually online tonight. With that, I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask City Clerk Fazekas to call the roll, please.
Morris.
Here.
Finucane.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Perkins.
Here.
McAdam.
Here.
Verbic.
Here.
Favor.
Here.
Mayor Smith.
Here.
8 present.
Thank you very much. Would you please join me standing and pledge of allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first item on the agenda, and there are copies of the agenda out in the foyer if you'd like to grab one. Following along, item C, approval of tonight's agenda. This is usually done relatively routinely unless one of the council members would like to either add or delete an item from the agenda. Seeing no one who would like to do that, I'd ask for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderman Morris. Discussion? Roll call.
Morris.
Yes.
Finucane.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
McAdam.
Yes.
Verbic.
Yes.
Favor.
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
Thank you. The agenda is approved as printed. We now move along to public participation, allowing anyone in the audience who would, or on Zoom, who would like to address the council tonight. We do have a couple of folks who have indicated they would like to speak. Mandy Giancani and Clark Johnson. Clark and Mandy, would you prefer that we wait until we get to the item on the agenda, during which time you'd like to speak, or would you like to speak now to your item? Okay, very good. We do have one person on Zoom, I believe, who has indicated they'd like to take part in public participation. J.J. Wett, are you with us tonight on Zoom? No, so J.J. Wett has indicated that he would like this letter read. And this is from J.J. Wett, 127 Tilton Park Drive, DeKalb. As a previous resident in unincorporated Genoa, we were allowed to turn leaves and yard waste, to burn leaves and yard waste. As convenient as this was, it was not convenient for neighbors and passing vehicles on windy days. If a resident burned their leaves on windy days, the smoke would often travel for about 3/4 of a mile and would often permeate residents' homes. For those of us with seasonal allergies, it was particularly hard to breathe when the smoke would enter your house. Vehicles that were passing by would have very little or no visibility if the smoke was billowing across the street. While there is more time to stop in the country, there is not as much time in the city. City Council may want to take windy days into consideration when amending the city code. And that's referring to Council's consideration of the Environmental Committee's recommendation to amend our open burning code and ordinance regarding leaf burning, which we will get to in just a moment. Now with that, I don't believe there are any other members who would like to speak under public participation at this time, so we'll move along to item E, presentations. We have a couple of very special presentations. The first one is from the United States Census Bureau, and that's recognizing the city of DeKalb. City Manager Nicholas.
Thank you, Mayor. I think all members of the council have a copy of the certificate that we received from the U.S. Census Bureau, thanking the city of DeKalb, which was a member of a Census Community Partnership and Engagement program that was central to the success of the Chicago region in getting out the count. Our area exceeded the national self-response rate by a comfortable margin. A lot of effort went into updating our address files for people who had voted before and trying to get people who had been counted before, and trying to get as many people counted as possible. Workers, volunteers were recruited during a very high period of unemployment, and nevertheless we were able to succeed in our efforts. And I want to personally call out a few people from the city of DeKalb who put in a lot of time. One is former intern Adam Grubbs, Joanne Rouse, our community development coordinator, Jason Blumenthal, who's no longer with us but was a management analyst through much of the period that we were trying to get out the count, and Mayor Jerry Smith. So thank you all for your contributions to this certificate.
Well, this is extremely critical to us, not only to get a good count, an accurate count, but so much depends on census in the state of Illinois. First of all, it will impact the number of representatives we will have in the U.S. legislative process, but within the county and within the city, it will impact how we redistrict or district our wards and districts. So it's very, very important. And again, I will dovetail on what City Manager Nicholas said, and that is we had a lot of good folks within the community helping out on our 2020 census. Okay, our second presentation is very special tonight. That's an update on our police chief search. And City Manager Nicholas, once again.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to say that we're going to go a little bit beyond an update tonight. So if you'll bear with me, I'd like to give you and the people tuning in and people in the audience tonight just a very brief synopsis of the process that we've been following in pursuit of a permanent full-time police chief. There are also some people here who participated in that process and have a few things they'd like to add. And then also the main reason we're all excited, we have our candidate, and actually more than a candidate. So I'm going to go to the podium, if I may.
Yes, and I understand there are going to be some other folks who will make presentations. I'd ask for the convenience of those watching at home, and since you are socially distanced, I'd ask you to feel welcome to remove your mask or bring it down as you speak into this microphone. City Manager Nicholas.
Well, thank you. As some of you may recall, interim Police Chief John Petrogallo announced that he was going to retire back in January 2020. And so at that time, a search process began, and it was temporarily halted when we all thought the pandemic was just going to blow over in a month or two. And that was in early March a year ago. And as the COVID pandemic settled in and there was no easy out from that, we determined that we ought to wait until sometime and we could all gather in interviews and in committee meetings and so forth. I'm happy to say in late May, Bob Erdell stepped up as John Petrogallo was leaving and was appointed as acting police chief. Then the process was revived again in November, about mid-November of 2020. The council set the stage for that by approving a number of very significant changes and police reforms, both in how our operating procedures were defined, and in particular with the use of force, the need to intervene, and many other things that were detailed at a number of special meetings of the council in the late summer and early fall. The community was very much engaged in this. We had a very robust social justice movement that was making us all think hard about what unites us and also what still separates us. And through that process, we also were able, in a budget review, to look at how we could institutionally change how we perform, how the police department performs, particularly in relation to the community. And there was a new division started, a Community Support Services Division. We went from about $550,000 in what had been allocated for some pretty conventional slots, such as school resource officers and so forth. We still have those, but we now have a $2.2 million budget, which is oriented in a lot of different ways. That we have one, and we will soon have two embedded social workers to help with community welfare and wellness and so forth. But my point tonight is not to review that again, but to say that that set the stage for reviving the process and looking hard at, first of all, how we want to present the department and how we want to present the community to people who might be interested in the position of police chief. So we did all that. The Community Search Committee was the engine behind that. That was formally organized in November, as I said. I've had the honor and privilege of serving as an ad hoc member of that committee. And I just want to read very quickly the names of the people who are on that committee, and a few people are here tonight who will want to speak a little bit to the work of the committee and also supportive of our finalists who is with us tonight. Ernell Brown, who is one of the organizers of our local Black Lives Matter organization and a principal director of the Sir Donald Foundation. John Walker, a member of our Human Relations Commission. John's in the audience tonight. Glenn Roby, Annie Glidden North Board, and DARA President. I am going to drop my...
Please.
It's all right. Monique Bernuti, who's an Associate Vice President at NIU. Lisa King, also on our Human Relations Commission, works in the NIU Chance Program and a DeKalb Township trustee. Will Heinisch, who's here tonight, local business owner and a DARA board member. Mike Pisley, who's here tonight, part of the Annie Glidden North Board. And Don Thomas, who's here, who is a retired Sycamore police chief and had been as he was serving in in an active role years ago with DeKalb County chiefs and brought perspective that we thought would be useful in the course of reviewing candidates. Also serving in an ad hoc role, Michelle Brenning, our HR generalist, and Josh Bolt, Assistant City Manager. So we worked together in November. We created a comprehensive brochure. We got it out to the world. We got 27 candidates, and each one of those was carefully considered by members of the search committee. We narrowed the field to 6 candidates in early February, which included 2 internal candidates. In late February, we conducted Zoom interviews with each of the remaining candidates to narrow the field to 2 finalists. And then the crescendo, which was last Thursday. As Dave Bird can attest, it was a long day. Started early, finished late. And here's what we did. We included a lot of people in the process of reviewing the 2 finalists. We had one interview team in the morning. It was composed of local law enforcement leaders from the county, the city of Sycamore, and NIU, and also council member Tracy Smith. We also had an internal team of city employees which represented all of our collective bargaining groups and also our management. And also each candidate had a 1-hour interview with the city manager. So these are hour, and we were flipping and moving people around, and Michelle Brenning was very good at that with Michelle Anderson. So that was a robust start. There was just a break for lunch, and then the candidates faced the search committee, and each had about an hour with the search committee. And then following that, I think a very important part of the process, each candidate, each of the 2 finalists then addressed the police department, everybody who could make it. So we did it at end of first shift, beginning of second shift, the last half hour of one, the first half hour of the other. And each candidate had about an hour, maybe 5 to 10 minutes of an introduction, and then Q&A for the next 45, 50 minutes. And then following that, I joined the search committee, and we talked well into the evening about what we should be doing and recommending. After those meetings, I have to say that the unanimous consensus of all the teams that had interviewed the candidates that day, and the search committee, and my own opinion, was that the most outstanding of all the candidates we had was David Bird. And I'm just going to introduce David very briefly, and then I'm going to ask him to say hello to the council and to introduce himself to you and to our community. So David's a 31-year veteran of the Illinois State Police. He became a trooper in 1989 after attending Grambling State University. He steadily moved through progressively more responsible positions, and I'm going to wear myself out reading these positions. He was sergeant, master sergeant, lieutenant, executive officer and operations commander, district commander, major and commander for the Northern Illinois region of 10 districts, lieutenant colonel, and since August of 2020, colonel and deputy director of patrol for the Illinois State Police. He's a dynamic leader. He has a remarkable depth, and he would be the first to tell you, the Illinois State Police, from where we sit in a community, often they come in and then they leave. They work a lot of patrol, they help local communities with special events and so forth. But David has made a point of immersing himself in the communities that he serves in. And as you can see by reading the progressive rise in responsibility, he's had a lot of communities that he has served. And what we found in our background was that they all want to adopt him. So we are very fortunate to have his interest. His style is to be a hands-on leader. I called him earlier in the week, last week, just to make sure, logistically everything was lining up just as I did with the other finalists. And he had just gotten through a really bad weekend. One of his troopers had been doing a traffic stop on one of the expressways, and a vehicle came and smashed into his vehicle at high speed, and he was very seriously injured. And he was in the hospital. I called him with the trooper and his family. So we understand from the people we've talked to, this is what he does. This is how he operates. So without any further ado, I want to bring David Byrd, our new police chief, to the podium.
Wow, thank you. I mean, what can I say? City Manager Nicholas has, I've called him several times, and he can attest to this, and I thanked him over and over for the opportunity. And a lot of times, especially in law enforcement, you don't always get an opportunity. And I think we find that out, not just in law enforcement, but in life in general. Sometimes you just wish somebody would just say, take a chance on me. Let's take a chance on me. And City Manager Nicholas did that. He took a chance on me. I went through a rigorous, interview process with all the committees, and I want to thank them personally, everybody who was on the committee, for making it so rigorous, because this is an extremely important position to hold. Law enforcement, a police officer alone, the responsibility and the power that you have at your fingertips as a law enforcement officer is extremely great. And I can only imagine when you're the chief of a police that it's extended. And I don't take that lightly. And I just really appreciate how the committee was just so vigorous and diligent about making a good selection. And I can really appreciate their hard work. And I'm extremely excited to get to work as well. I will tell you that this is a calling for me. I told City Manager Nicholas that I do have a photo in my phone. I was 5 years old, and I had a badge on, and I recall my mom taking me to take pictures at, I think it was JCPenney or at the time, and the photographer kept saying, hey, he won't take the badge off. He cries if we try to take the badge off. And my mom was like, forget it, just let him wear the stupid badge. And I think I knew, at 5 years old, I knew what I wanted to do in life. And I wanted to serve the people, and I wanted to be a peacekeeper. And I think, when I had the opportunity in 1989 to join the Illinois State Police, one of the greatest law enforcement agencies in the country, I took that opportunity as a young man, very young. I would say I was mature for my age, but sometimes I did act like a 21 or a 22-year-old. And I can recall making numerous traffic stops, and people ask me, how old are you? And are you old enough to do this job? And I'm like, don't worry about that. Can I have your driver's license insurance card? But I did go through that, and 31 plus years later, here I am again, embarking on a new opportunity, and I'm extremely excited. I was speaking earlier with one of the reporters talking about my first initial contact with the city of DeKalb. During the NIU homecomings, they would always request some additional assistance from the Illinois State Police. And at the time, I ran a very aggressive criminal interdiction team in the city of Chicago. And I remember my lieutenant saying, hey, we need you to assist Northern Illinois, with their homecoming. And I'll be honest with you, I had never been to Northern. I'm from the south side of Chicago, a lot of places I hadn't seen. And when I came up here, we really enjoyed the opportunity to work with the city of DeKalb, the police department specifically, and also with Northern Illinois University Police Department at the time. We worked as a unified front. We did an amazing job during homecoming, made sure everybody was safe, and we did our job. And it was just extremely, just a great time for me then. And that's when I saw the opportunity and DeKalb opened up. Believe me, I jumped at the chance to put in my application. And then there was a little lull with COVID, and I was like, oh, man. And I was like, oh, well, hopefully I'll be able to get back in this. And then Ms. Brenning sent me a email, and she said, I hope you're still interested. I was like, oh, yeah. She's like, well, you're going to have to send the documents over. I'm like, it's on its way. Don't worry. And I was just extremely excited. As you can see, it's kind of hard for me not to smile because I'm just excited for the opportunity. I'm in good health, and and this is what you're going to get from me. I'm a professional police officer. I believe I'm battle tested. There are a lot of things that I have done in my career that have made local and national news. And let me just say this, that, you know, I am very accepting of every culture and every sexual orientation, and that's what I expect of all the law enforcement officers that will be under my span of control. We're living in a time that we cannot, have, you hear so many people talk about tolerance and, I'll tolerate this culture. We're not looking for tolerance, we're looking for accepting. And that's what we need, acceptance. And I think DeKalb right now is doing an amazing job with the programs they have in place to engage the community. I'm here to act as a force multiplier for that. I'm looking forward to meeting with the community as well and being invested in whatever I can do as the head of the police department to make life better for the community and of course, for all the officers inside of DeKalb Police Department. So I did have opportunity to speak to them. Like I said, I'm a cop's cop, but I know you can be a cop's cop and also be extreme friend with the community. So, because I've done it, I know it can be done, and this is something that I can't wait to get started on, sir, Mayor. So I appreciate the opportunity to address the City Council and, of course, to address everyone here. I'm extremely excited for the opportunity. I just talked to some of my Illinois State Troopers on the way up, and they're like, "Boss, you sure you want to do this?" And, I'm like, "Yes, I want to do this," but it's going to be bittersweet because I do love them with all my heart. I think City Manager Nicholas talked about one of my troopers that just got hurt. I had a second one who is fighting for his life right now and recovering from another accident. So I do love all the officers under my span of control, and I will do the same with the personnel for the DeKalb Police Department. As soon as I put on that uniform, it's time to go, and I'll be ready. So thank you for the opportunity, again, for addressing you. Thank you very much.
So you've heard enough from me. I think it's important that the people who participated on the search committee are also given an opportunity tonight just to say a few words about the process, about David, and about what they think about as far as the future is concerned. So I'm going to start with John Walker. John and I became acquainted just in this past year. I feel I've known him since I was a child. I trust him. I share a lot of private thoughts and feelings with him, and I feel that he has not only a pulse of the community, but is very, very dearly and intensely devoted toward what's good for the whole community. So, John Walker.
Hey, I appreciate that, Bill. Not many people like me in this area, but it is what it is. Well, I'm not going to let Bill get out of here without saying some great words about him. I'm a 23-year UPS driver, done a lot of youth coaching. Coach Mr. Perkins' son, we got stories, but we won't get on all that. The thing about DeKalb, I came here and keep in mind, I had something I was going to read, but I'm not reading it. I'm just going to talk from the heart. I came here as a 21-year-old young man, 19-year-old young man from Indianapolis, Indiana. And DeKalb has helped raise me to become a man, I was just thinking about my life after reading his, and I don't know if it's legal or not. I gave this to my wife, his resume, and I was like, who does this remind you of? And she just pointed to me. So, I wanted to get to understand a little bit about Mr. Berg. And, so I'm going to let it go. And first of all, I want to say it's an honor and a privilege to serve on that board. I met a lot of great people. And like I said, I never thought I would like a police chief in Sycamore, but I love him. I love him. Love him to death. He's been a great man. I wish I would have known you when I was younger going through there. But anyways, and Mr. Nicholas, I have to definitely tell you how great of a man. And this is coming off the top of my head. We all talk about belonging and, being family and respecting each other. this man definitely is that, you know, and I don't want to take up everybody's time, but Jerry, I'm going to do longer than 3 minutes. So I'm working, driving a UPS truck, parked. Bill runs over, wants to talk to me, gives me his card, and I took his card and I just threw it. You know, I think it landed in front of Children's. But he kept on being persistent to get to know me. And the one thing that I can say, this man has been one of the best men that I've met in my 44-year-old life. You know, I coached a lot of kids out here that have been treated misfairly. And this is the only man who honestly just cared about, just wanted to know, you know, some of the ins and outs about the town and how people are treated. And, you know, he came to me with an open heart and he really cared. And he's the first man I just opened up to about a lot of things. And we sat there and we talked, you know, every Saturday at 11 o'clock. Don't even have to make an appointment no more. I just go talk to Bill. And we got to, like you said, we got to know each other real well, you know, personally. And that's the thing that I respected the most about him. He opened up and I opened up. And it's just been a privilege and an honor to call him a mentor of mine, and it's an honor and a privilege to say he's a friend of mine. So let me get into Mr. Bird now. Let me get into Jordan now. So for me, you know, it was more than just being a police chief. We needed somebody like myself, I'm thinking, you know, somebody who can come in and be in the, you know, in the communities, all communities, not just my community, but, you know, many communities. And the one thing that I noticed about Chief Bird's resume is, you know, a lot of, you know, mentoring. And, you know, I paused a little bit and I'm thinking, you know, man, like, that's what, you know, our kids need, you know? I mean, yeah, you're gonna have your basic people who come down and just troublemakers. You're always gonna have that no matter where you live. But then again, there are so many great kids who, you know, don't come from homes with fathers or sometimes mothers. And that's where guys like Chief Bird steps into their life and, you know, can tell them what's right and what's wrong without having to take them to jail or put handcuffs on them. Sometimes it just takes, young man, come here, let me talk to you. Firm, you know? And, you know, I believe that's who we have. But the one thing I have to read to you, the thing that touched me the most, and this is just, man, don't cry. No, I want you to cry, so I'm not the only one. Are you ready? And keep in mind, you know, my grandma and my mom raised me as well. Okay? Okay, so look, check this out. He has 1 million accomplishments. We'll be here all day to say them all, but this is the thing that got me was, I am extremely proud of my accomplishments. However, those accomplishments fail to compare with my accomplishments as a father. I have 3 beautiful children who I love with all my heart. I feel that's my greatest accomplishment in my life is that of fatherhood. I never had the fortune of knowing my father. However, that only inspired me to be the best father I could be for my children. I have been a role model for my kids, and they have followed my lead. And I can't begin to explain how rewarding it is for me to have responsible, polite, accountable, and loving children. That means a lot, man, just so you know. And that's one of the reasons why I fought for you. So, you know, remember that. So, you know, we have 27 applicants, and honestly, 25, I believe, will make great police chiefs somewhere, but not just here. We have one man here that can honestly help turn our town around. And let's remember one thing. He's not going to go through North Annie-Glidden area or wherever area with a cape on his back that says, you know, Chief Bird. You know, there's problems. It was problems here for almost 30 years. So I think with the community support, you know, parents, people, kids, it's everybody's job. It's just not the DeKalb Police Department and Chief Bird. He's not coming here to give us a facelift. He's coming here to lead us into where we're going. It is up to us as residents to follow his lead. So honestly, I just think that you guys definitely should consider this man because honestly, I have a good feeling about him, as you can see. So I had more, but let me tie it in one more thing too while I'm up here. I feel good because people are honestly paying attention to me. It feels great. It feels real good. So, you know, and this is, you know, I was telling my wife, I have to find something bad about him. Like I have to, because my name is on this. Listen, I'm not going, I have to, babe, I have to find it. So, lo and behold, I said, I need a sign that just says, okay, quit arguing with yourself, this is the man. Me and my wife, we closed the night off watching news, watching some TV show, and we never watched Fox News, never. It was on TV, you know. So, you know, I'm eating chips or whatever, and I look up. It's Chief Byrd, you know. And I guess it must have been a time where, you know, one of your officers got hit. And everything that he put in his resume, I felt it. And I knew he was the one right then and there. It was like a sign. Honestly, it was a sign. It was crazy. And I'm not going to act like I go to church every day, even though I do, Mom, every once in a while. But it was a sign. And I don't believe in signs. But when I looked up and he was on Fox News, you remember that interview? He was on Fox News, out of nowhere, holding back tears like I'm trying to hold back now, saying, you know, just pull over, get over. You see a vehicle, get over. He was there and he held it in. You did good, he held it in, but that's the loving man we need here. We need a police chief who's loving, firm, but gets a point across the way he needs to be. So, man, hey, that's all I have to say. Thank you, guys. Good evening. Man,
Thank you, John.
Okay. Thank you very much, John. Will Heinisch.
Thanks, Bill. So I don't know how I can follow up after that, but I'll try. I want to thank the council and Bill Nicholas for letting this process play out as it did, because we were a diverse group of people, very diverse. And to start with 27 candidates and narrow them down, and for me, like John said, there's a lot of people that could have been chief, but I was looking for somebody that was more than just a chief, that rose above the top, above the cream, the best of the best. And some of the things, and we asked him a lot of very difficult questions to the point of I didn't want to know the answers, and he said he didn't know the answers, and that's kind of what I was looking for, is I didn't want a know-it-all person. But some of the key points that he brought to us were nobody operates above the law, integrity, honesty, and I think a lot of shared common principles that rise to the top, and that's what this community and this city needs. I've addressed the council for 10, 15 years. I was joking with the group. The prior city manager threatened to throw me out of City Hall and throw me out of her office on numerous occasions. And I feel we've turned the corner as a city and as a community, and we're on the upward swing. And so that's why I'm active, I'm a part, I appreciate being selected to be a part and help select these people that will continue the progress of making DeKalb what a great place it is. So again, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Bird. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Ernell Brown.
Good evening, Chief Byrd. I'm gonna start by saying this. The level that the committee went to in ourselves to be able to choose a candidate, not even the process, the things we each as individuals had to confront and face and confront each other about were real. Getting those things done, we began to look at candidates. And it came up again, we had to face ourselves several times. Getting all of that done paved the way for us to be able to choose the right person. Because we had to get past our differences in opinions, ideologies, appearances, and so many other things. educational levels, because I'm not, way up there with a bachelor's and master's and doctorate. But after we got past all of those things, we were able to screw our heads on right and actually gear it towards what is belonging. And there was a few times that we, bumped in. But in the end, after addressing, the city attorney, Bill, and a few other people, we continued to fight because your name continued to be at the top. I think every one of us saw it, but each one of us in our own way challenged, could this guy actually be this type of person? And in wanting to know that, we put Bill to task on a few things, and he brought us back the right answers. And we confronted what it truly means to belong in DeKalb and what DeKalb needs as we go further in that statement, in that belonging, because the work on that's not done. Choosing the chief is just one component of doing that work. And like everybody said, unanimously. And he came back to us with unanimous from other groups, not just us. And they saw the things that we saw. So that affirmed to us that we're not going crazy. This guy actually exists. And it started, for most of us, with the cover letter. Then we delved into the resume. And we chose who we believe is the right man for the job here in DeKalb. We didn't choose a police chief. We chose who we needed for DeKalb's police chief. Because this is a change in the nature, the very core of the culture of this city. It's going through some things, confronted by some, old demons and new challenges. And it's going to be tough. And that's one thing that we wrangled over. Who would have what it takes to be a part of the change? And again, your name continued to be at the top. We challenged every angle of being like a person. And we challenged the tough questions too, the conversations that are not regularly had. And again, your name continued to be at the top. So for that, we chose you. Because of the expectation you placed on yourself for so long. And you spoke about some things when you interviewed with us related to the change that needed to come, and you didn't even know you were speaking on them. They were, general, in some of the questions we asked, but you went further into those things with, like they said, integrity, honesty, character, and you spoke to the very core of cultural change that must happen in DeKalb. Like John said, we're not looking for a hero. We're not saying that Chief Bird's going to come in and be the end-all, be-all. But he surely is not going to come in and be a face for continuing business as usual. The change that's happening here is going to continue in other areas of this city, in other areas of institutions and things like that, to make this place a place where people do belong. One of the things that came up in that belonging meeting, I stick with belonging because this is where DeKalb's going. I'm tired of worrying about where it's been. In that belonging, the word valued, seen, heard, and empowered came up. So I just want to say personally that after considering those needs, you as a person and the past of this city, we have empowered you to be a part of that change. And we know without a doubt that you're the man for the job. And we appreciate you being here and taking that position.
Thank you, Ernell.
Finally, Don Thomas. A few remarks, sir?
Mayor Smith and this city council and Bill Nicholas. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Nicholas for inviting me to serve on this committee. During the last 25 years of my 40-year career, I've served on many search panels for a police executive or a police chief. Some of them were ho-hum. Some of them were just routine. This was not a routine panel, let me tell you. I think you can tell from the three people who just talked. It was focused, candid, transparent, and very rigorous. I was really honored to be part of that team. And I'm proud of the name that we put forward for Bill's consideration. Now, speaking of the candidate, Colonel Byrd, you'll be chief in a few moments, I hope. When I read his cover letter, and I think both Ernell and John mentioned something in that cover letter, I thought, this is a little different. This looks good. His resume is impeccable. It's incredible. And I knew of him by reputation. And his reputation is really good, let me tell you. Okay, so we started this journey, but it was the interviews that convinced me, as a former police chief, this man will be a leader for the city. This man will be the kind of leader I wish I had worked for. I worked for 5 chiefs during my 40 years. Some were good, some not so good. It would have been an honor to serve with you or under you. So I'm going to finish here in just a moment, but I want to add one more thing. The last 3 speakers have spoken eloquently about a police chief for the city of DeKalb. And I'm going to submit that a police chief in DeKalb City is also a police leader in the bigger community, in the community of DeKalb County, in the community of everything west of the Fox River. I mean, I was a chief for 15 years, and I know that I dealt with more than Sycamore people. I dealt with people who worked in that city, who lived other places, and people who drove through that city and went to church in that city, and they're from everywhere. And I think you already know this, Colonel. So I'm going to finish by saying I am proud that we submitted his name, and I feel really good about this selection. And I think you're going to be a terrific chief, and congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Love to work with you as well. Thank you. Feel as mutual.
Thank you, Don.
2 more pieces of business. As you know, by the DeKalb City Code, the city manager has the authority to appoint department heads. I've always sought your concurrence. I've already extended an offer of employment. I feel I'm a little bit ahead of but I wanted to say that I would appreciate your unanimous consent behind my offer of employment. And if you can indicate in some fashion, thumbs up, Mr. Smith, you too. Okay, thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right. One more thing. Before we move on to a lot of other items, I just want to say a few words about my friend and our acting chief, Bob Riddell. Bob's led the DeKalb Police Department from the 1st of June, as I said in my opening remarks. He has a very unique blend of fierce dedication, keen intelligence, honesty, and I underline that, pragmatism, and yes, heart. Now, I hasten to say I wouldn't say he's a softie, except possibly with his new granddaughter. However, his knowledge of our community and the department and the times helped him guide our department through 10 months of sweeping institutional reform, from the department's operating procedures to body cams to new training goals to the reconfiguration that I mentioned just briefly in our department divisions. And he's He's brought more resources to community engagement in policing and behavioral health than previous chiefs have in a long time. I work closely with Bob, and I've been in a very unique position to gauge his character as well as his work product. We're very fortunate to have him on board. Dave Bird will find him to be a very creative and loyal partner as he takes the reins. Thank you for your leadership, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bill. Chief Bird, great to have you here. Thank you, John, and Will, Ernell, and Don, for your words. Bob Riddell, I've gotten to know you over the last several months. You are top drawer. Thank you for all you've done for us. And we really look forward to having you acclimate into our community, Chief Bird.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I see our athletic director from NIU is here, Sean Frazier. It's a big day in DeKalb. Not only do we have a new police chief, but today Sean Frazier was able to announce the hiring of Rashawn Brno as the new head men's basketball coach. Coach Brno played for DePaul, or was it Northwestern? DePaul. Coached at Marmion, has been on Bobby Hurley's staff at Arizona State for the last 6 years. And much like the 27 finalists that we had, or candidates, Chief Bird, I understand we had a large number of very, very qualified folks for the head basketball coach at Northern. So congratulations to both of you, and I hope you guys get to know each other. And in a couple months, we're going to ask you to stand up and recite the words to the Husky fight song. Okay?
I'll start studying tonight.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, there are no mayoral appointments tonight. I would like to just make one brief announcement. We have had a number of resignations, one from our planning and zoning, one from our finance advisory committee. And it's usually my process to try to find someone to fill those vacancies. And with my term rapidly ending here and transitioning out, I'd like to suggest to council that what I plan to do is I will continue to try to find the right fit for those commissions. But I want to work with our two mayoral candidates, Carolyn Morris and Cohen Barnes. And so I will be sort of chatting with you if I find the right person. And if that, if we have a consensus that, hey, that works, I'd like to get somebody aboard, sooner as opposed to later. If there are any problems, I will respectfully wait for one of our, either you or Cohen, whoever is elected to make that appointment. Does that sit okay with you? I think it probably will with Cohen. Is that okay with council? Does that make sense? Okay, good. Okay, let's move along to consent agenda. All items on our consent agenda are usually enacted by one motion unless someone would like to have a separate discussion on either of the two items. I see no one indicating they'd like to do that, so our consent agenda is as follows. Minutes of the February 22, 2021 regular city council meeting. And number 2, accounts payable and payroll through March 8, 2021 in the amount of $6,640,716.20. I'd entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Perkins, seconded by Alderman Morris. Discussion? Roll call.
Finucane.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
McAdam.
Yes.
Verbic.
Yes.
Favor.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
Thank you. Tonight's consent agenda is approved as printed. There are no public hearings tonight. Now we move along to considerations. We have several to discuss this evening with no final action. But the first is consideration of a Citizens Environmental Commission request to amend the city's open burning codes and ordinances. City Manager Nicholas.
Thank you, Mayor. I see this as a cleanup item, but there's a little bit of history here it probably bears just mentioning. The city's burning provisions, open burning provisions are actually found by the adoption of the fire prevention code. And that code changes about every 3-4 years or so. And when we went to the international code, it had very specific provisions for burning of leaves and garden debris. And mostly it was kind of a mix of guidance. Well, you can do it, but you can't do too much of it, and you can't do it in a public way, and you can't make too much smoke, and if the neighbors complain, then you have to have a garden hose and you got to put it out. And obviously that leaves a lot of room for discretion, and also it ultimately, when neighbors can't figure it out together, then it involves a city enforcement official, whether it's the police or the fire department or code enforcement. So, but this is what we've had in our code, and I remember a time a couple decades ago, I'm sorry, but where it was just a municipal code that spoke on this, and actually we had outlawed the open burning. Now, one of the things we were always careful to do was to identify the fact that we're not outlawing the use of barbecues, and now it's become very popular to see a fire pit in 1 out of every 3 backyards, and as long as it's not used as an ersatz incinerator for other things, construction materials and so forth, it's fine. So what the Environmental Commission has asked is that we go ahead and amend what we've adopted from the Fire Prevention Code to prohibit the burning of leaves and yard waste under any circumstance, but allow obviously whether it's charcoal or wood chips or whatever you use to cook your food, and using just standard common sense when it comes to fire pits, not starting them with gasoline and things like that. So that's what's on the table here. I supported the Commission's bringing this forward, and I bring it to you, and with your direction, we can go back and, if need be, to make some amendments. So what say you to this?
So what we're looking for is actually you to clean this up a little bit, bring back an ordinance with the
If you're agreeable
amendments.
to this.
Right.
There was a little confusion today, I heard, and some people were saying, you mean I can't cook hamburgers anymore? No, in fact, it was pretty explicit in my background, but that's how it goes sometimes.
Okay. From the background that City Manager Nicholas has provided us, any discussion? Alderman Favor.
So my first question is the last bullet point. I don't fully understand what we're trying to outlaw by an EPA permitted devices or.
Yeah, that isn't something I'd probably bring forward to you. It'd just be pretty basic. We're not testing. We don't have the staff or the training to be testing the air quality in people's backyards. It's not what we're going to do.
So
I appreciate that thought.
So that's one. I'm on the fence a little bit. I can see where this has been abused in the past. If somebody's trying to burn wet leaves, grass clippings, I mean, those things are very high moisture content. They create a lot of dense smoke. Is somebody going to get in trouble if they've trimmed their trees and they burn those in their fire pit? I mean, that's yard waste, but they're burning it in their fire pit. So again, I don't know. And how are we going to enforce it? The other one I always ask is, how do we enforce it? So,
Agree.
So I guess
Give it thought on
initially right now, unless I hear other comments that sway me, I'm leaning towards just leaving it alone for now.
Alderman Morris and then Alderman Perkins.
Alderman Perkins can go first.
Okay, Alderman Perkins. Don't fight over it, you guys.
Have there been any issues that have been raised? Any, this is the first I've really heard of it, and that doesn't mean that
Yeah.
there aren't issues that have been raised, but I'm just kind of curious what issues have been raised.
I wouldn't say it's been an avalanche of concerns and complaints. I think what sparked this, frankly, I may as well just, I won't mention names, but there's a property along North First Street, north of the Dresser, and people work very hard all year round, trying to in a very environmentally friendly way, raise food. It's almost like a little truck garden in their side yard. And what was originally kind of annoying to neighbors, now people just kind of accept it. It's a good thing. They share vegetables and fruits and all that. But in the fall, there's a certain harvesting that goes on, and then there's old vines and so forth. And I understand that on some nice fall crisp day, they had a bonfire there of their clippings and old tomato vines that had dried, and it was quite a sight, and then it created a lot of smoke, and that created a complaint, and that would have been, it was an unusual example, but I think that sparked the interest in this, and then it generated some conversation. I wasn't in all the meetings, but then they came to me, what about this? And I thought it surprised me that was still, even in some more limited way, acceptable. And then I looked at the code, which is in your background, and actually it would have been, and if they could have put it out with their garden hose, it would have been fine. So,
Alderman Morris.
that's what it was.
Okay. So I think the issue that this is attempting to raise, if it's not just the specific neighborly type issue, is the issue of greenhouse gas emissions. And so I think that that's what the Environmental Commission is trying to be cognizant of. And I think I've long been an environmentalist, but haven't really realized for very long that burning leaves was not a friendly thing to do for the environment. So I think that that's what they're getting at. I think that's the purpose behind this. And I think that, the Environmental Commission has, we struggled with the backyard chickens issue, and we made a good decision with that. But I think, if we're going to have commissions, we really need to respect their perspectives. So I love having the freedom to choose what to do on my own property. And I love, just deciding what I do. And I don't really want to be told how to operate. But I think that this is a very small step in a positive environmental direction. And I think I've heard it said a few times in the past month or so that Mayor Smith had signed on to an environmental accord of sorts at some point to demonstrate that we intended to be an environmentally friendly city. So I want to share those points because I think that this is a small thing that we can do in support of our environment. Knowing that farmers and are, a big portion of our community here, and recognizing that we are having drier summers and wetter springs, and we are seeing the impact, the long-term impact and ramifications of greenhouse gases. And at least this is an acknowledgement of some of those struggles.
Alderman McAdams.
Like Alderman Morris, I'm an environmentalist, but I also struggle with the idea that people should do what they want on their own property. I think that an outright prohibition is probably too much, but one thing that was brought to my attention when residents talked about it was the size of the fires and the size of the pits, and maybe that's something that we can tighten up so that we have a greater control of exactly how large of a fire you can have. That seems kind of vague.
So I think you're well aware, as we saw on many occasions going through the budget this year and last year and so forth, we don't have staff to police this. So what's happening right now, I think Greg was getting at that, it's one or two concerns. I think from a staff standpoint, if that's of interest, it's one thing to say you can't burn. That's pretty easily enforceable. If you see fire and smoke, you know something's wrong. But it's another thing to say, well, we got to test the emission level and so forth. We don't have the training or the people to do that. So I think that's, I don't embrace that, not because it's not a concern worldwide, where there's massive burning of trees in rainforests and so forth. But this is, we're talking about maybe a little something else. So I don't see how we'd ever enforce that. We right now don't even have a property maintenance inspector. That, just so you know that, I don't want it to organize a regulation that we can't enforce.
Alderman Favor.
So let's see if I can stump Bill. When is the last yard waste pickup in the fall?
November, where's Andy, what is it, November?
First week, November.
About the 1st of November, maybe, something?
December 1, okay.
Okay.
December.
Because I was going to say, you know, depending on how warm the fall is, you might end up with that garden full of, or like an ice storm that we have, and now you've got a tree that's fallen over. Is somebody going to, well, we don't have a property maintenance person, so no, somebody's not going to get cited. I was going to say, is somebody going to get cited because, but that's the only other thing. Again, just trying to work through it, and I think yard waste starts in April. Is that-
April 1st.
Yeah.
If I may, Alderman Verbic had a
Alderman Verbeek.
I like the guidelines and safety reminders. You know, I'm a fire pit user, and we have a number of trees on our lot, and for me, it's seemingly a good way to move these kinds of branches and things along, or bundle them up, of course, for the curb. But what I surely wouldn't do is, on a day with our neighbors' windows open, get a fire going and smoke them out. So yeah, it's yes, you can do things on your own property, but some of those things could affect our neighbors. So I like some of the things that are being discussed here.
I was going to say, if I may, the consensus or the compromise that, the legal compromise that I can envision here is a nuisance standard. It doesn't provide a clear, bright line in the terms of you cannot, you know, burn anything, right? But that obviously, that clear, bright line comes with consequences that have been discussed here. But the nuisance standard, the test is, would this be obnoxious to a reasonable person? Mm-hmm. And, you know, the backyard bonfire that doesn't emit tons of smoke, the normal, you know, we're roasting marshmallows in the backyard is not a nuisance, right? But the bonfire that is dumping all the leaves and yard waste that is creating a smoke bomb, so to speak, is a nuisance, and that's complaint driven. You know, the neighbor's going to call, right? And that's easier to enforce, so to speak, in a sense, with minimal resources. It's not a clear, bright line. I don't know if it addresses necessarily the environmental consequences, but it is a well-recognized legal standard to enforce.
So you have no firm recommendation as our city attorney?
No, I think just hearing what the council's saying in terms of they're not in favor of an outright prohibition, and we have limited resources to enforce certain types of other regulations. I believe the nuisance standard, which is a legally acceptable standard, it's you would see that, you know, this type of open burning being treated as a nuisance in tons of other municipalities throughout Illinois is something to consider, I think, and you know, but I mean, you could, from a legal perspective, you could do an outright prohibition, or you could do something less, or you could do nothing at all. You know, I'm just
Thank you.
throwing it out there. You know.
Did you have another comment, Alderman Morris?
Yes, I was just going to say that I am okay with the outright prohibition of leaf burning. But, I would want it to be clear and make sure we're talking about leaves. Like, I still want to be able to, burn logs and burn things that, like, sticks off my tree, like, I feel like we don't have anywhere to dump those anymore, I believe. So that seems like a reasonable solution if I'm not doing it in excess. And my Christmas tree, I don't know, my kids love doing that. But so I'm just saying I'm okay with the outright ban on leaf burning, just as a recognition of greenhouse gas emission issues moving into the future. So,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Alderman Fanouken.
Thank you, sir. Right now, as I understand it, it is a nuisance enforcement now. So if I'm burning leaf and it creates a great amount of smoke, that then the fire department can be called and they can come in order me to douse the fire, or if it's bad enough, they could put it out themselves. As to Alderman Morris's comment about not having a place to dump material right now, as we just talked about a couple of minutes ago, the beginning April 1 and running through the 1st of December, there is garden waste pickup every week with your regular garbage pickup. So that's not a real issue. I understand some people don't like if they work on if they work collecting things in the weekend, don't want to wait till Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday to have it picked up. I understand that. But there are solutions that are available for residents. I don't believe that an outright ban on things other than leaves would be worthwhile, but I could understand an outright ban on leaf burning because of the amount of smoke that it does emit. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Alderman Fanouken. Alderman Morris.
I appreciate Alderman Fanouken clarifying that. I think we need to clarify that to the community because that's not really something I've known of. So,
Alderman Favor.
So in addition, I think we still have the drop-off at Dresser Road as well. That's,
no, the
No,
sign
it's
says
gone now.
closed there.
Done.
that one's closed? Okay.
Used to be. You could do
You say, well, there's another opportunity, but
that. Yeah.
I would be okay, I'm okay with no leaf burning and no grass burning, no grass clippings, but still allow branches, twigs, things like that, or leaving it the way it is today. So I would compromise.
There seems to be consensus, City Manager Nicholas, that if you brought back an amended ordinance which simply took out or included the prohibition of all leaf burning, but kept the small amounts of other items to be burned on a person's private property, would be reasonable. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you, Bill?
Yeah, I'll bring back something.
Okay, bring that back. Okay, any further discussion on this? All right, we have our second consideration, 2021 liquor license renewal update. City Manager?
I think this is much more straightforward.
Yes.
The council has been very sensitive to the fact that in 2020 in particular, restaurants and bars were struggling because of constraints on their ability to remain open. And the council has taken some steps in the last 6 months to allow for the payment of liquor licenses in installments. Well, Ruth Scott, our executive assistant, made me aware a couple weeks ago that we're heading into another cycle here, and all we're asking is if we can continue that installment approach for one more cycle, and that's a cycle that begins on May 1st, and notices are already going out, and there's also well, there's still some installment invoices going out for the year of 2020 where people weren't able to pay by December 31st. So we'd like to give them that little bit of good news or not such bad news, if you're agreeable to that. Okay.
Okay,
And I ask you only because the ordinance is clear, it doesn't give that kind of latitude, but we've been kind of feeling our way here in the last 12
well,
months.
it's a special year,
Yeah.
for sure, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, is there consensus there that that's, okay? All right, moving along then, the number 3 consideration tonight, consideration of contractor bids for the painting and repair of the South Water Tower. City Manager Nicholas.
Thank you. There's some considerable background here. I'll just very quickly go through this. I don't have to remind you that we did go through a process in the middle of 2020, looking to receive bids and award a contract for the painting of our South Water Tower. And after some discussion over a number of meetings, the council agreed to reject all bids and rebid in the wintertime. That bid process has taken place. Our second round began with the invitation to bid in December. We attracted 8 bids by the time of the deadline, which is January 26th. Those are displayed to you, those 8 bidders, on the top of page 5 in your background report. 5 of them had not bid in the first round. And the 4 lowest bids are, the bidders are just described very generally in the background. I made a point of noting in my background report that since the last round, there are a couple of state-level enactments that we have to take into account in weighing whether we award a contract to one or another of these companies. One is what's become known as the Illinois Preference Act. It's actually a longer title, Employment of Illinois Workers on Public Works Act. That act became law on July 1st, 2020. It was clearly a response to the COVID pandemic. It's taken, as it usually does, agencies and also the state legislature. It's typical that it takes a while to understand what the interpretation will be of a particular enactment. And what's become more clear in recent weeks is that, at least since the middle of January, is that the people at the state agency that enforces this, the Department of Labor, are interpreting this broadly in respect to public works. The first interpretation we had was that meant public works where the work was going to be funded by state funds or funds administered by the state of Illinois. And to nail this down, we had some email correspondence with the gentleman with the Department of Labor who leads the division that deals with community water supplies, and then I called him just a week ago to hear it from him, and I asked the question that I had asked in my note, and the answer was very clear. He was emphatic and not ambiguous at all, and he said that we would have to comply with that. Now, that may be something that could be tested in the courts, but we're not looking to pursue that approach. We have enough things bubbling right now in terms of people litigating against us, and I don't recommend that, but that is one option. We're not alone in looking at it as something we may have to contend with, and this is your decision, but I recommend that we do follow Mr. Perilli's guidance. Oak Brook has also acknowledged this as probably what the interpretation is going to be going forward, so I put in something in your background. You could see that. As they put out a bid packet, they acknowledge the applicability of that particular act. And then the other thing is, since the middle of January, the IEPA, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, has been challenged to define very clearly some new training rules that were described generally in the administrative code, the Illinois Administrative Code, under some revised standards in a chapter which I've quoted in the background the general title is corrosion prevention standards. So part of the work in this south water tank isn't just spraying some paint on it. There's got to be some grinding and some repair work, and that's that corrosion repair work. Now, if it's just a small amount of that work, an edge of a railing or something like that, that's considered incidental repair. But in this case, it's considered, I would say, we have enough of it, talked to Matt about it, that it would be considered general maintenance, and then that falls under the provision. So there are two new provisions that we didn't know about or discuss a year ago, which are now in play, which led me to my recommendation that further research that we've done, I think, has revealed that those state regulatory provisions would be interpreted to bear on us by the people who enforce them at the state level. So that would disqualify the three lowest bidders. And obviously, anybody who you would want to award the contract with would have to say in an absolute sense that they would have to comply with each of these in the contractual framework that we would agree with. But that would be the company known as Era Valdivia. I have been familiar with this. Brian Faber, who is our Director of Utilities and Transportation, is here tonight and can speak to any of these and answer any questions you may have. And so that is the best I can do in doing the research and the background for you, and I ask for your direction.
Prior to any city council discussion, we do have several folks with us, a couple of folks with us tonight who would like to speak to this item. The first is Mandy Giannacconi.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Mandy Gagna. I am the Director of Organizing for Painters District Council 30, headquartered in Aurora. I appreciate the opportunity to address the council as well as Mayor Smith and the citizens of DeKalb. On February 8th, 2021, I submitted a very detailed 82-page document to this executive body for the record. You will recall that the first section, general information, listed both the Illinois Preference Act and the newly adopted IEPA regulations. I specifically placed them at the beginning for their importance because they are both relatively new. You see, Painters District Council 30 wants to be here as a resource to the City Council, as we are leaders in this industry. Concerning the Illinois Preference Act first, it is just that, it is the law. This law was enacted when our state's unemployment rate reaches a devastation number of 5% or above for 2 consecutive months. It requires any contractor doing business on public works projects to employ 90% of their workforce, that is Illinois residents. Why wouldn't we want to utilize these tax dollars to put Illinois back to work? Likely, a Michigan-based contractor would not be able to comply with this law. Concerning the newly adopted IEPA standards, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency adopted new standards in November of 2020. It is now required that contractors performing this work must be certified according to uniform industry standards if they work on this highly technical and dangerous work. Your community water supply is the life source to your residents, and I, for one, am thankful to the IEPA for standing up and who is the responsible lowest bidder. My understanding of the regulations apply to this work and what I have learned about the other bidders, that this would be Area Valdivia. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Clark Johnson.
Glasses off here. First of all, welcome. Welcome, Chief Berg. Yeah, that was a fun process. It was great to hear the passion of everybody who hired you. I think the right man for the job. I'm here to speak about the two laws and actually the intent of both these laws. First of all, the Community Water Supply Law, which is the Coding Application Specialist Certification. This is a law that actually requires some, technique, training, and ability to attack a water tower.
Corrosion protection is a very difficult thing to attack in the first place. But when you're up in the air, there's also the scaffolding, there's safety, there's a lot of training that's involved in that. And this is a third-party certification that applies to anybody who's working on a water tower. It just makes sense. The second one is the Illinois Preference Act. This is actually, I know it came into effect July 1st, but this has been on the books for many years. So it was just kind of a dormant law until we had 2 months, consecutive months of unemployment above 5%. Then it came into effect, which essentially keeps Illinois dollars in Illinois. So not only do you have workers that are traveling around the country that are 1099s, which if you know anything about payroll tax, you're losing about a third of your tax dollars right there from the payroll side. But also you have people that are actually living in the state who are spending money in the state, and that was the intent of the law. And I am for it, so I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Okay, hearing those two comments and City Manager Nicholas's background and recommendation, any recommendation tonight would be simply, if it's consensus that we follow that recommendation, Bill, you bring back this in the form of a resolution that we would then vote on at the March 22 meeting. So, having heard what we've heard, I'd open it up to any council discussion. Alderman Faber.
So my first statement is going to be that the state is they've given us 2 mandates, and they've rewarded us with the 2 mandates that they've given us by removing 10% of our local share of the municipality disbursement. So again, we've gotten unfunded mandates, and we're fighting upstream against the budget. So those 2 things bother me. Obviously, to hire Illinois residents, yes, we would like to hire local. My question would be, have we asked the 3 lower bidders whether they plan to hire? So we have, and they've agreed, or are they, okay?
No, I'm shaking my head, meaning
Okay.
that's the question.
That's a question.
Yeah.
Second, who's responsible? The city of DeKalb, or is our engineering company, if we're still using Dixon Engineering, to ensure that all these regulations, all these certifications, the work is done to our standard, or to the Illinois EPA standards, because we're not experts. That's why we pay for the engineering company to make, those decisions and those determinations on our behalf. The third part is, again, we're budget strapped, so I don't know how I can explain that we're going to spend an extra 3% of our reserve budget above and beyond the increase last year when we have other bids that meet the bill. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Alderman Faber. Any further comments? Alderman Smith.
We used to have a local preference ordinance, if I'm not correct, but that was overturned by the Supreme Court. So how does Illinois have their own when one ordinance has always been overturned? Madam, testing your
you're
legal.
directing that to me. There was a virtually identical prior version of this act that was struck down by the courts. It was subsequently reenacted by the General Assembly. It has not been struck down to date by any court, so you run a very large risk. When this act was triggered last in the Great Recession, the Illinois Department of Labor chose not to enforce it. They've taken a different attitude. And it's not just directed to DeKalb, it is statewide.
Right.
I've heard, there's several, the Illinois Department of Labor is saying that they're going to enforce this. So legally, I don't think that you would want to be in the forefront of challenging that. But that is the legal landscape, the legal backdrop to that.
Okay. Thank you, because that's what happens for being around this too long.
Yes.
Way too long. Thank you.
Alderman Verby.
So does this redefine lowest responsible bidder then?
I don't, or is that?
Going forward
directed-
with all the things we go out to bid for, and again, we're trying to be good stewards with the taxpayer dollar in the city of DeKalb. And I believe that they always expect us to approve the lowest responsible bidder, but it seems like that definition needs to be enhanced, because in this exercise alone, the additional cost is $350,000. If we had approved this previously, that would have been the cost and the project would have been done. So how do we communicate to our taxpayers that this is great, that we are certainly supporting Illinois labor as much as we can, but is that a part of the lowest responsible bidder definition?
If that's
Matt?
to me, yeah, I believe that you could, there's two approaches that you could take here. One is I think that this would qualify as the lowest responsive bidder if we can certify that they can't comply with these two requirements. The approach that I would recommend is that you actually reject all bids and you authorize Bill to directly negotiate with the company that he's identified. We can do that as a home rule entity. We can also reject all bids. We said so in our bid, and that you give them an amount not to exceed in that direct negotiations. I think that the fact that we did this bidding exercise will show what we're going to call the preferred lowest responsive bidder here, that they may have an incentive to negotiate with us. I think that's legally would be my recommendation of what you do.
Thank you.
Alderman Smith.
Bill, are we on a time crunch here, though?
Yeah.
I mean, we are on a severe
Well-
time crunch with the Facebook project, and I
Well,
think Brian's
yeah.
doing a well placement.
We've, this time last year, not quite a year ago, we were still negotiating with Facebook. It's called something else then, Ventus.
I forgot their name.
And one thing that was clear is that water was going to be a big part of their operation. They use it for cooling, they use it for other things, and recycle it. And in fact, as you know, this council approved a water agreement requiring a reservation of a certain amount of so many gallons, I can't tell you what it is off the top of my head, of water. And so that no matter whatever happened in the system, that we would have that water. As you know, our water, Brian could say it better than I, but our water courses through our system aided by 4 elevated towers. And if one is out of operation for whatever reason, and we had that happen when sometimes when we do a well repair or something like that, people are not starved for water. But if there is some other thing that happens while that one tower is out, then you have issues with pressure. We also have a requirement to maintain a certain level of pressure. So one thing that we didn't want to do, when Facebook comes in a year from now with their first phase, we don't want there to be any question, and neither do they, and we have basically obligated ourselves to this, about the pressure and the volume of water that's available. So what I wouldn't want to see, even if it wouldn't technically deprive them of any self-confidence, just seeing and learning, because I'm sure Matt Sexton is watching tonight, that we are talking about taking something out of service, say, a year from now. If we miss this window, the good weather window, would probably be unnerving. So I don't want to take that risk if I'm recommending something. So what I would say is we proceed to get this done this year. and we do it, there's plenty of time to do it. That's why we set up the bidding process in the winter, and we make the award in the spring, and they get set up, and they do the work in the best possible weather, and it's done, and we're back to normal.
Have we finished the other?
The well is done.
The well's done?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Alderman Morris?
So I think what we mentioned last year when we took this out to bid, that this is a totally blind bidding process, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that it's a really reasonable idea if it doesn't stress the city manager out too much. I think it's a really reasonable idea to consider rejecting all bids and then negotiating directly with that lowest responsible bidder. Because the lowest responsible bidder was trying to make a good faith offer, good faith bid, and if they know what the alternatives were, then they can choose to reduce those costs some, recognizing the unique circumstances of the past year.
Alderman Favor and then Alderman Verbeek.
So it's easy to cast doubt. I don't know how we're saying the first three bidders are not being responsible. It's easy to throw out terms like likely or could they, maybe they will. Again, we're not the experts. We're going to hire an engineering firm who's going to ensure that the work is done to the standards. They're going to ensure that work is done to the contract. I tried looking up the environmental statute. It's extremely difficult to look it up. It's extremely difficult to review it. Who's to say that all of these painting companies don't already hold certifications in corrosion painting that the state of Illinois would accept under that law? So I do know, I asked Director Favor for the history of our water towers going all the way back to 2002, and what has made the most significant impact on the quality of water is the process that they use when they use a 3-part epoxy system and painted our water towers with that. We get 20 to 30 years lifetime out of those. When we've not used that, we've not gotten, the equal value for our dollars spent. So again, it's easy to throw doubt on things when, we're looking to use a certain painter, or I don't think it exists. The doubt is not in my mind that we're going to hire one of the first three companies and we're not going to get the product that we want. I'll defer.
You say if we awarded to those first three companies, we would not get the kind of work that
No,
we
I'm
want?
saying I have no doubt, I am not doubting that they're going to provide the work and the quality that we want
Okay.
for our water system in DeKalb to make it
You
safe
believe they'll
and
satisfy the
effective.
spec?
That they will
believe they'll
follow
satisfy-
the specifications per the engineering guidelines that have been established. Whether or not they should, if we've agreed to that, they should hire Illinois residents. They should be accountable for that. But again, just to say, I know the other thing I was going to add was to throw out the bids a second time, I think would be ridiculous.
Mayor?
I have a comment to that, but Alderman Verbeek.
Agreeing with Councilmember Morris's suggestion to reject the bids, and I would like to go back to this company and propose $900,000 as the cost cap for this project. Again, we've seen the bids come in. I too shared concerns and voted along with council previously on not accepting the project. So I think doing our due diligence and complying with new laws, new code, that would be the best avenue to take.
My comment on those three bidders, Alderman Favor, was that Dixon Engineering, which is our engineering firm, did not recommend the low bidder, which is V&T. They did recommend Seven Brothers, of which again, they're in Michigan, okay? And what I hear you arguing is that if we were to take that low bid and strongly suggest or require them to hire
It's a
Illinois
requirement.
labor.
It's a state law, so they're required.
Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion? Alderman Perkins and then City Manager Nicholas.
I agree with Alderman Verbeck. I like the thought of throwing them all out and negotiating with someone, and I even like the thought of throwing a number out there and saying, here's the bogey. If you can get there, you know, there's reputable bidders below you, respected bidders, who have satisfied the spec. We've identified, and our engineering folks agree with that as well. I think it's a good negotiating position.
City Manager Nicholas.
I think there's another consideration here. It's sort of the elephant in the room. If you take a look at the chart on the top of page 5 that spreads all 8 of the companies, what do you see there? Do you see a couple patterns there that are interesting? I do. The top 2, I think we're not that hungry. Maybe busy, maybe just not so interested. The bottom 2 in particular, or maybe the bottom 3, I'm wondering if they're paying prevailing wage, and I'll tell you why. Someday we'll have a consideration to talk about prevailing wage, because we do a lot of bidding on big jobs like this, and I think it's important that we follow the law on that. We were talking about, nobody's above the law. Well, even though we're hungry and we don't want to spend a lot of money, and the water fund is not independently wealthy, if you have Company A and Company B doing exactly the same thing, how could Company A be 30% lower? The Prevailing Wage Act doesn't just require you pay the prevailing base wage, you have to pay the benefits. Now, there are other benefits that a company may, by choice, pay, maybe because of a collective bargaining agreement. They may also pay their foreman more and so forth, but there's also foreman wages in the prevailing wage scale. And we are obligated, we don't pass that anymore because the state of Illinois doesn't require that anymore, but we're obligated to follow that. We're just asking for a lawsuit here. I don't know how you can look at these and say that those bottom 3 are paying prevailing wage. And what really concerns me is a company, and Alderman Faber spoke to this, that's supposed to be our consulting guidance, doesn't pick up on these things and just says, yeah, go with that. It annoys me because I am your fiduciary steward. So if we don't, so let's say we go with one of the 3 lower ones who are probably not paying prevailing wage and probably not hiring local people because they come out of Michigan. Are we going to ask them to hire some people off the street when they come here? What are they going to do? And are they going to be trained up, these people? I don't see this, I don't like $214,000, but I don't want to see us, we could easily spend that kind of money in the courts.
Alderman Verby.
And I think this also points to perhaps we should freshen up our lowest responsible bidder ordinance and require that training component so that we don't need to call into question the training that some company may or may not have. We just have it in our ordinance that that's an expectation of all of those working for the city of DeKalb.
I guess
But
my
that's
final
for-
comment, Mayor, is that I agree with Alderman Perkins and Morris and Verbeck. I think the city attorney's suggestion is a good one. I think it makes some sense to see what we could do. If you were to vote to throw out all the bids, let's see if we can negotiate with the company that seems to be responsible in terms of training.
Great.
Are you comfortable then, having heard this discussion and these myriad of ideas, that you and Matt can work something that comes back that is more legally within the framework of what we need to do, while still maintaining the fact that we can get this work done in a relatively short period of time.
I'm always comfortable with the city attorney when it comes to legal parameters.
Okay, good.
All right.
Is council comfortable with that then? That
Yeah.
we're gonna wait to have Bill and Matt bring something back to us that makes some sense so that it's not as difficult to understand?
I'm not,
I know you
I'm
are,
not.
Alderman Favor.
but we can agree to disagree.
Well, we're not always comfortable with everything we do here on every other Monday night, are we? So, okay, let's move now to resolutions.
Okay.
Number one, Resolution 2021-021, authorizing the lease purchase of a single-axle dump truck through Rush Truck Center based on the state bid contract price in an amount not to exceed $154,526. I'd entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman McAdams. City Manager Nicholas.
Yes, Mayor. So this particular item is asking you to agree to award the bid to Rush Truck Center. And as I mentioned in the background, there's another piece to this, and that is we'll need to negotiate the lease. In the budget, we put $205,000 in for major vehicles, and you say, well, this is going to cost $154,000. Well, not in 1 year. We usually do 5-year deals, and I don't know whether it will be 2.5 or 2.6%, which is about what it was when we got the other big dump truck. But first of all, we have to get the truck, and we have to get it while it's available at this price and in our region. And so Andy Rye has brought this forward, and I supported the commitment to the price, and then we do the negotiation with the lease company, which is tax exempt leasing corporation for these larger vehicles. So if you're agreeable to that, we'll proceed. This is a state purchase price, so this has already been bid out by the state of Illinois and so forth.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdam,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes,
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes,
8 ayes.
that resolution is approved. Thank you. Number two, Resolution 2021-022, authorizing an architectural improvement program, economic incentive for the Egyptian Theater, 135 North 2nd Street, in the amount of $4,314. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Fanouken, seconded by Alderman McAdams. City Manager Nicholas?
Yes, and I want to thank Alex for your patience tonight. Thank you for being here. Alex would rather not be here and would like to be in the position of saying our stage is open to anybody who wants to use it, and it's fully accessible. But as you can see in the background, there was a recent inspection by the State Fire Marshal's Office, which rules on these matters, and the existing wheelchair lift that goes about 4 feet from the main floor to the stage no longer is acceptable, and that presents an urgent need to get a replacement. And the Egyptian was closed for the year for all intents and purposes, exhausting a lot of resources that they had, and they've come back to us to see if we could help a little bit with the purchase of a pretty pricey lift for that kind of a small area. The bids that were presented, there were 3 of them that ranged from about 9,800 or 9,777 to over almost 31,000. The lowest bid is what we're talking about here. Our AIP program could cover this. It's certainly a qualified expense, and we'd like, the Egyptian is so critical right now to the rebound in the downtown. I am solidly in support of this. If this had happened and they'd had a banner year last year, I might not have been recommending it, but certainly it's a hardship occasion, and I support their request.
Yeah, thank you for asking us to consider this, Alex. Any further discussion on this? Roll call?
Oh, I should say something.
Sure.
Your resolution has a different number in it, but the number is 4,314.
4314.
Yes.
What I read, yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes,
8 aye.
thank you. That resolution is approved. We have no ordinances for second reading tonight. However, we have several for first reading. The first one is 2021-009, publishing the official zoning map of the city of DeKalb. A motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderman Morris. City Manager Nicholas?
This is an annual exercise, and I appreciate the work that Dan Olson and Doug Eaton have done to present this chart to you. I think it's all pretty straightforward. These are changes that you have approved after recommendations from the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we recommend your approval of the zoning map as amended.
Okay, any discussion? If not, roll call, please.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes,
8 aye.
thank you. Would we like to waive second reading and approve tonight?
Move to waive second reading and approve.
Second?
It's been moved by Alderman Morris, seconded by Alderman McAdams, that we waive second reading and pass this ordinance tonight. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes,
8 aye.
thank you. That ordinance is approved. Number two, ordinance 2021-010, amending Chapter 9, Establishment of Fees, Section 9.04, Ambulance Service Fees, in order to reflect actual costs of providing emergency medical transportation service. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Alderman Verbic, seconded by Alderman Favor. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, last year we became a part of the GEMT program, that Ground Emergency Medical Transportation Program, which provides supplemental payments to help us close the gap between what Medicare is typically able to pay for ambulance transports and what the actual cost is. The actual cost is set by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and we have traditionally been charging a lot less than what they identify as the standard schedule of fees for ambulance service in our area. And currently that is somewhere between, there may be slight differences depending on the type of the service provided, but $1,891 and $1,903. So we're leaving about $100 on the table every time we pick somebody up and transport them to the hospital. We're talking about these direct transports, not going to some special,
Okay, any further
other place.
discussion?
so I recommend this,
I'm sorry, yeah, thank
first and
you.
second.
Roll
All
call.
right, I had enough to say.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdam,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
We have the option to waive second reading, and if anybody would like to make that motion.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Alderman Perkins, seconded by Alderman Favor, that we waive second reading and approve this ordinance. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Alderman Fanouken, thank
Yes.
you. Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
Alderman Fanouken, we can't see you, so stay away, would you? And Bill, I'm sorry to walk all over your
That's all right.
final comments
It was-
there.
it was
You and I
merited.
are in lockstep most of the
Yeah.
time, so
Yep.
not on that one. Okay, let's move along. Ordinance 2021-011, amending Chapter 23, Unified Development Ordinance, Article 5.03 and Article 5.04, by allowing two-family attached dwellings and multiple family attached dwellings not meeting the minimum lot area requirements as a special use in the TFR two-family residential district and the MFR 1 multifamily residential district. I'd entertain a motion, please.
So moved?
Second?
Who made that motion? Okay, Alderman McAdams made the motion, seconded by Alderman Verbic. City Manager?
So I think you get what we're trying to do here. There are older houses, or older buildings, I should say, that are in multifamily zoning districts. And we would like to see them downsized. And from time to time, people come in, sometimes younger families, sometimes not, who say, boy, this is really nice. We could probably, this was a 5-flat or a 6-flat or something like that, crazy, no place to park, people are parking on the lawn willy-nilly. Right now it's vacant, somebody's looking to sell it. We could maybe live downstairs, and if this could be a 2-unit, this would work out for us. We get some income upstairs or down or whatever. And it can't work under our zoning code because we don't have a lot area for that. In effect, what it's saying is, you have to do it as a single family, and some people would probably say, yeah, that's good, we'd like to see more single family. But economically, it's just not feasible to do. You basically have to demolish the house and build something again, and even then, it would be a small lot for a single family. Nobody has that kind of money to throw around, particularly those that are looking to make these renovations. So, I really appreciate what Dan Olson had recommended here. There are a couple, this isn't a blanket allowance, but it's for those that can meet certain minimum requirements, and the conditions are identified on page 10 of your background. And we feel this will help. There may not be an avalanche of new permit applications, but there should be some. And there are these buildings in the older parts of the 5th Ward, behind Elwood House, and John and Harrison and all that, and then in almost every ward, 3rd Ward, 4th Ward. I think this is a good thing, and we recommend it to your approval.
Yeah, this had the considerable discussion and was passed unanimously, recommended to us by the Planning and Zoning Commission the other night. The question was asked of Dan Olson during that meeting, how many lots would this, in the city of DeKalb? He didn't have the exact number, but I think, Dan, if I heard you correctly on the telecast, you said no more than 100, perhaps less than that. Yeah, right, so, So it was, again, a good recommendation, and it's being recommended that we pass on this. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Fanouken,
Here, yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
8 ayes.
I'd entertain a motion to waive second reading and approve this tonight.
Move to waive second reading and approve.
Second?
It's been moved by Alderman Morris, seconded by Alderman Favor, that we waive second reading and approve this ordinance this evening. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
8 ayes.
Thank you. That ordinance is approved. Finally, before we get too punchy tonight, number 4, ordinance 2021-012, approving a special use permit for existing antennas and associated equipment on top of the 16-story building at 507 East Taylor Street to allow for an upgrade of communication equipment by U.S. Cellular. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Alderman Morris, seconded by Alderman Verbic. City Manager?
Thank you, and again, tip of the hat to Dan. There's been a small forest of antennas on top of the building. Makes sense that it's one of the tallest buildings in town. But years ago, we had recommended some higher standards for how they will appear and still be able to perform the function they are intended for. And so we have an opportunity with this applicant to impose those requirements, and this requires a special use permit. That permit was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission under the conditions that are identified in your background. We feel that those are adequate to provide some concealment. I mean, there's still going to be, but there's some visual sleight of hand that will minimize the impact as you look at it from a distance. So we feel that's the appropriate thing.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
8 ayes.
Thank you. If you'd like, we could waive second reading and approve this tonight also.
Move to waive second reading and approve.
Second.
Been moved by Alderman Verbic, seconded by Alderman McAdams, that we waive second reading and approve this ordinance this evening. Roll call. Excuse me, any further discussion? Roll call.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
8 ayes.
That ordinance is also approved. Thank you. Prior to our executive session meeting tonight, we have reports and communications. And I'd like to, first of all, start with Alderman Carolyn Morris from our first ward.
I just want to welcome and congratulate our new police chief. We are thrilled that you're here, and I want to thank our city manager for a robust process that gives us a lot of confidence in this decision. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Morris. Second ward, Alderman Bill Fanouken.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. several items. I also would like to welcome in our new Police Chief, Dave Byrd. Welcome the community. We look forward to working with you. I'm sorry I'm not there in person to greet you, but with COVID, I'm playing it extremely safe. I also would like to echo Mayor Smith's comments earlier about welcoming the new NIU men's basketball coach, Rashawn Brno, to town. Look forward to the progress that he may be able to make. Another item, earlier we spoke about the census in the city of DeKalb. The city will be redistricting in the wards in the near future. As a group, I think council should begin discussing the method council and staff would use for this redistricting. I think it's important that we try and do it as neutrally as possible and move forward. And then lastly, you know, I'm usually one that talks about COVID, and I will tonight a little bit, but tonight it's more of a congratulatory method in speaking with Cindy Graves last week at the Mass Clinic at the Convo Center, she reports to me that they've now done over 15,000 doses here in the county of DeKalb. They've done several of the mass clinics at the Convo Center, averaging over 900 per clinic. And you're doing the senior clinic Monday and Friday at the health department. And also they've gone out to the group homes, senior centers, clinics at different places to help throughout the county. I think it's important, you know, that means that there's those 15,000 doses here in the county, plus people like myself who received a vaccine outside the county, and I'm happy to report that I'm going to get my second dose tomorrow. So before much longer, I'll be back in person at City Council for my last several meetings. And that's it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Fanouken. Alderman Smith, Third Ward.
Chief, congratulations, sir. We've had enough discussion, so I'll leave it at that. A couple things. I've been checking on our building projects. Isaac Suites, they're bricking up the south side. They robustly, I think, are looking for occupancy in 90 days, according to John Pappas. Angora, I guess the panels have been ordered or in manufacturing in Wisconsin. And he anticipates moving on that as soon as possible. It has to do with labor. I mean, Facebook is stealing all our labor, but I guess that's a good thing when you have a lot going on. So really, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Alderman Greg Perkins, our fourth ward.
Welcome to DeKalb, Chief. Great to have you. And I'd like to thank the committee, too, for such an exhaustive process that yielded such a clear consensus. You know, the passion that everyone showed is awesome. Welcome. Love to have you. Best of luck.
Appreciate you.
Did we have clear consensus on everything tonight? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. So, but I would echo that, Chief. Alderman McAdams, our fifth ward.
The Fifth Ward welcomes you as well. The best of luck to you in your endeavor.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate you.
Mike Verbeek, our sixth ward.
A warm Ward 6 welcome to you, Chief Byrd. Your police headquarters is in Ward 6, and we really look forward to working with you.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Alderman Favor, our seventh ward.
Welcome, Chief. I look forward to actually getting to know you.
Thank you.
I thank Alderman, excuse me, I'm sorry.
There's more, but wait,
Okay.
there's more.
Is this going to be consensus on this now?
It will. So obviously, with the warmer temperatures, everybody's happy with that's happening. Watch out for pooling water. If you have a storm drain in front of your house, go out and clear it off or break the ice away from it so that the streets can drain and not leave standing water. Also watch out for potholes as things are thawing. Potholes are blowing up. So be careful, watch out as you drive. And I do want to thank Andy and the Public Works team for the jumping right on it and the work they're doing.
Thank you, Tony, for those comments, and for one that you made earlier this evening. Once again, it appears that a key component of municipal finances will be negatively impacted by the state of Illinois, specifically a cut into the local government distribution fund, the IGDF, by Governor Pritzker. Since 2011, following a customary 10% distribution to cities across this state from personal and corporate income tax revenue, Springfield has consistently cut into the LGDF. to where it now stands at about 6%. In the governor's 2022 budget, he recommends another 10% cut on top of that. I encourage the city of DeKalb to join the Illinois Municipal League alongside a large number of other mayors and cities across Illinois in objecting to a further cut to this local government distribution fund. And I'll add my welcome, Chief. We're just great to have you here and look forward to a great career here for the city of DeKalb. You're welcome. Okay, City Clerk Fazekas, any report?
No report.
And City Manager Nicholas, anything else this
I
evening?
just want to thank Dave Bird for loyally joining us for the whole meeting tonight, and I know you have many things to do, and thank you. Thank you for accepting the position, and my heartfelt best wishes to you as we work ahead.
Okay, we do have an executive session scheduled tonight to hold an executive session in order to discuss executive session minutes as provided for in 5 ILCS 120/2C21. I'd remind folks on Zoom that we're going to have to cut the cord, so to speak, because of privacy concerns and legal concerns. We are not able to hold an executive session virtually online. So we thank you for your participation tonight. And I would entertain a motion to recess into executive session.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderman Smith. Any discussion? Roll call.
Verbic.
Yes.
Favor.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Fanouken.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
McAdams.
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
We are now in recess for executive session.